everybody. Welcome to the third of 13 Lunar Conversations that we are doing to celebrate my album 13 Lunar Meditations, Summoning the Witches, that came out this January. And since we are unable to tour this year, at least not as much and not in the same way, we are doing this virtual tour/hang, digging into one song at a time, listening to the songs and talking about them, about the creative process and everything that comes with it. So thank you so much for joining in. Please do drop us some comments in the chat. It makes our life so good to see them. Hi, Jen. Before anything else, we're going to start just to take 2 minutes to talk to you a little bit about the upcoming vocal intensive that I have created and curated through my Orchard of Pomegranates. And the reason I want to take this moment is because I feel like there's so much crossover between this project that highlights women and women's voices and this work that is more about the giving side of that, the teaching side of that. First of all, the intensive will happen between April 9th and 11th. And some of the facilitators teaching this time around, and actually since the very first time that we've done it, are people who are involved in this project. The very first intensive actually happened in my house in Montreal with Jay Clayton, who will be with us in 2 minutes. And we were all in the same room, if we can imagine that kind of reality these days, in October of 2019 with 10 people live in my living room. And when the pandemic hit, we couldn't really do that anymore. And I moved these intensives online. And instead of having one co-teacher, I invited 8. And that's what it kind of has become. And this time around, we have my teacher from New England Conservatory, who is actually one of the people who I went to New England Conservatory to study with, Dominique Eade. She's gonna give a lecture about her life and her path in music, and she's gonna teach a workshop that will touch on jazz and improvisation and phrasing. And we're gonna have master percussionist and drummer and body percussionist Tupac Mantilla. He's gonna give a 2-part workshop in body percussion. And then there are a whole lot of other things that I'm not going to go into all of it, but just to mention 3 of the collaborators on this project, Kyoko Kitamura, Nihan Devecioglu, and Anna Smale, who contributed lyrics to this project and who are all also incredible artists who are going to be teaching workshops at the intensive. This time around, instead of just offering the full ride or single, I changed up the way we're doing it. So you can also choose to go with a specific series. So there's a listening series where you can be more passive and just kind of come in and check things out without participating that much. There's an improviser series and there's a writer series where you can dig into graphic scoring and lyric writing and poetry and so on and so forth. So there's a lot there. It's really open to people who are very, very experienced and people with no experience, as long as you're coming with an open heart, willing to explore and play. We want you there. So check it out. And I really hope to see you next month, April 9th or 11th. Let's see a tiny video, and then I'll bring my friends to join me in the conversation. So, I want to invite my co-producer and conductor of Choeur Luna, the wonderful, amazing DB Boyko from Gabriola Island. Hello.
I am here with my open heart. No surgery. And I do bounce back and forth between Vancouver and Gabriola, but I'm very happy to be in the woods today.
Good place
you're
to
out
be. There.
I'm out there.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd love to visit you sometime very soon.
Mm-hmm.
And let's bring in the amazing, amazing Jay Clayton, my love. Hello.
Hello, amazing ladies.
So I just a couple of hours ago just got off of Zoom with Jay and a bunch of very beautiful women singing in one of Jay's workshops. Jay is giving these wonderful jazz workshops and free improvisation workshops on Saturdays. And if any of you want to join her, you can email her and she will hook you up with the details. I really recommend it for any singers who are into expanding on their chops and just learning some more material and getting bits of Jay's wisdom. That's always such a gift, Jay. Thank you for creating spaces.
I'm just calling it Zoom vocal jazz because it covers everything, tunes, improv, you know me, in and out.
Yes, it is. It's in and out. And I want to welcome Vergil Sharkya from Montreal. Hello, darling.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be among you. It's great.
It's so awesome to have you here. Vergil, we met you through Joanne too, and your work with the Joker Choir. We'll talk more about that later. So it's really wonderverful to have you here, Vergil, in the choir on the album, and is just a gem of a person and a musician.
Thank you.
So wonderful. And I think we'll drop your SoundCloud link in the drop there, so you can check out his work in electronic music. And also, do you have vocal work on there as well?
There is quite a bit, actually. There is also a recording of the show that we played together in January at the Lux Magna concert.
That actually Kathy Kennedy curated.
Exactly right, yeah. And a piece that I did with Kathy a while ago that I've mastered in the meantime. So there's also notably 2 excerpts from an album with Sarah Albu that I've recorded that just came out last year, just at the beginning of the pandemic. We did a launch in the virtual world, all this, but nonetheless, the music's fantastic. So have a go and have a listen. Anybody's interested.
Exactly. And lastly, I want to welcome Andrea Superstein from Vancouver. So we're hello, darling. We're in Vancouver, New York, Montreal, and Gabriola today. We're all over this part of the world. And Andrea just released a new single that's just so great. Called Every Little Step. And tonight you have an event tonight, no? 9 p.m.
Yeah, so we are
9 p.m.
doing
Eastern.
the 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific time. We are releasing the video for that single, and then we're having a Zoom after party.
That's so fun. I'm gonna be there.
Great.
So check it out, and check out her new music also. So really, really, really recommend it. It's so beautiful and features a lot of great Canadian musicians, right, from various places in Canada. No?
Yeah, we recorded and conceived of this completely in isolation, and the musicians spanned from BC to Prince Edward Island.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So you recorded remotely everything?
Everything, yeah.
I know one of the questions I keep getting from people is how did we make this record? Because people assume we made it during the pandemic, and it would not have been possible during the pandemic.
Yeah, it's so challenging. It's possible, but just everything takes so much more time.
Yeah, but I'm saying this particular, the 13 Lunar Meditations project wouldn't, I don't think we could do it
No,
remotely. That would not have happened.
Well, it was really live off the floor. And that
Yes.
was really one of the key intentions that you had, Ayelet, which I'm really, really happy that we stuck with that, because it kept it really alive. And I can only recommend, when there's an option to do that, it's a fantastic thing to do.
Yeah,
So.
when the music calls for that. I think not every project maybe calls for that, but that's definitely been my way of working, is really live, even though it's in the studio, but the live.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I mean, since we started talking about that, why don't we see the video of the song we're here to talk about, which is Mond. And this video, so every month we've been premiering these new animated videos, and we'll do that again next month. But this month we are going to show you a video that we made actually when we were working on our Kickstarter. And it's just a very simple one-shot camera of the floor of the studio. You're only seeing kind of half, because you're not going to see the band. The way we stood was the choir was along this wall, and then myself and Jay were here, and on this wall was the band. So you're not going to see the band in this shot. They're not in the video. But you'll see the choir, you'll see everybody, and you'll see Jay, and you'll see how we recorded it live. No editing, no nothing. It's just the take. And one of the things that happened in the studio, we did a couple takes of this piece, and on one of them, Cleo Palacio, I don't want to mispronounce her name.
Quentin.
Cleo Palacio Quentin, who is a great flautist and composer and vocalist, she brought in the French text. She used it with Jay, and it was so beautiful. But we ended up really liking the take we chose for the album and wanted the French. So we invited Super in to record an overdub of the French narration, which we did at the home of the sound engineer, Poirig. And that's how Super came into the mix. So actually, Super and Jay, you guys never met, even though you have this duet on the album.
It was a pleasure working with you, Jay.
I loved it. I love that French thing you did.
Thank you.
So shall we listen?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
And watch.
And watch.
My granddaughter points her finger at the moon, looking into the blue, clear sky at a very small, weak crescent moon. She says, Mond, in German. All of a sudden, I feel dizzy, facing the eternity of life, bouncing from one generation to the other. What kind of grandma will she be? My granddaughter points her finger at the moon.
Ayala pointe son doigt dans le ciel clair.
Looking into the blue, clear sky at a very small, weak crescent moon.
Vers un faible croissant de lune.
She says, Mond,
Mond.
in German. All of a sudden,
L'éternité m'est soudain apparue.
All of a sudden, I feel dizzy, facing the eternity of life, bouncing from one generation to the other.
La vie qui répondit de mes grands-parents, parents, moi, ma fille, et va continuer dans un cycle sans cesse à travers Ayala aussi.
What kind of grandma will she be? What kind of grandma will she be?
Quelle grand-mère sera-t-elle?
And the
Et
moon,
la lune,
she comes,
éternelle et
disappears,
changeante.
eternally. She comes
Vient
and
et
disappears,
disparaît
eternally.
comme la lune.
Oh, good.
Well, I haven't seen that for a while, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about the conduction cues. And there's a history across the country with working with choral conduction, which actually, well, it has some inception at the Western Front, where I used to be as the curator. My friend Danielle Péroger from Production Super Musique in Montreal had come to Vancouver to start to develop a work for voices. And that got transplanted back into Montreal. And my friend Christine Duncan and I were invited to work with an early music choir called Viva Voce. And we started to conduct them with improvisation. And it was a very exhausting affair because we didn't have any cues, hand cues for that. And so we would mostly do mimicking. And so that you start to generate a sound and then you ask people to follow that sound with you, which means you're always generating the material vocally. And that creates that you can't hear in the same way because you're always generating the material. And so Christine went away and started to develop conduction cues, and she researched Butch Morris's work and Jean de Rome's work, and she came up with these cues, which eventually developed into her choir called the Element Choir in Toronto. And then she shared those cues with me, and I developed 2 choirs in Vancouver, Voice Over Mind Choir, and a seniors project called Express Your Voice. And somewhere in the midst of all that, Joanne invited us back into Montreal a couple years later, and this was before Joker had started, which was the choir that she had put together. And Christine and I did a workshop with some of the material that we were working with and developing and generating. So Vergil, that, you know, there's I'm going to ask you in a moment, kind of, there are some similarities in some of the material and some of them not. But there's one, as we work together in that recording, that I'm just trying to remember what it is. So you're going to remind me, but this is the hand over here, which is, I think, telling everybody that because when there's so many things going on at once, sometimes you just want everybody to continue doing what they're doing. Is that what that is?
This one in Joker,
yeah,
that basically means everybody else who hasn't been yet given a cue. As you're building up layer by layer, as this very often happens, you know, we have a sign, somebody makes a solo, and then there is the calc, somebody will mimic what the soloist is doing. And as it builds up, then you have 3 or 4 people in the choir being busy doing something, and this is everybody else. This would be the sign for everybody, that the 2 arms is everyone, and the 1 arm was everybody who hasn't been given a sign yet. And yeah, there are
Great.
very many similarities, I think.
Yeah.
Probably for Ayelet's project, it was a little different because the music that what the choir was doing was really embedded in your songs. There was a very strong purpose, a very clear direction of what we were doing in terms of the accompaniment. Not that it was already done. I think a lot of what was developed in the work during the studio. For me, one of the greatest pleasures was seeing the work emerge as we were there doing it all. It was a real treasured memory for me to be part of this. I'm really happy. And at the same time, like I'd never worked with you before, DB, but yet your visual language, so to speak, your gestures were also in some way instantly recognizable. I could immediately relate to, okay, this is this. And even if there are small difference, it didn't take much of an explanation to kind of make me feel at home in that environment. And I think I speak for the other members of Choeur who were also part of the Choeur Luna.
Yeah. Well, it was actually a very profound moment for me because coming to Montreal and working with several people that I'd worked with in many different ways, and Jay, who I'd studied with in 1984 in Banff, and Ayelet, you and I had been working together, but Kathy Kennedy I had known for many years. In many ways, we had produced a big choral project of hers in Vancouver with the opening of the Vancouver Public Library. David Cronkite, I didn't even know he sang. He's got this beautiful bass voice. I knew him as an electroacoustic composer in Vancouver who went back to Montreal, and then he showed up on the doorstep. And Cléo Palassa-Quentin is a dear friend of mine, a composer, flautist who works a lot with integrated media. So it was this beautiful happening of many different people and new people to me, like you, Vergil, that really brought something very special to the group. So, and this piece is different than some of the other pieces that people will hear off the album, but there's just this beautiful delicateness that everybody really tuned into very deeply. And with Jay's interpretation, which maybe this is a good segue for you to think about, how you approach that, Jay, your interpretation of the text.
You're muted, love.
You see, everybody's always telling me to mute. I mean, right, it's like all my workshops, I'm telling people, no, this means mute. Okay. But anyway, I'll tell you what, well, first of all, just to answer your question, I'm a mother and a daughter. I mean, I felt that moon. I mean, I get chills about the whole concept of the moon and daughter, or mother, or whatever, Mother Earth. So I immediately made some kind of connection about that, the child, the mother thing. But what I wanted to share in general was, because now I have history with both of you, with DB and Ayelet, that I didn't know. I couldn't, But I have to just say that in the 70s, I've been doing this a long time, and there were different people that I don't know if you know Kirk Newrock. Of course, you must know Kirk Newrock, and if you know, but for me it was fascinating because 70s, 80s, 90s, blah blah blah, and all through it, I believed strongly in free singing and composition and the connection of that, and vocal sounds, and I had a voice group I did. And everybody has an approach, but to put it all together, and then for me to walk in, I get chills thinking about it. For me to walk in as the improviser, you see, I've mentioned this before. For me, I've spent my whole life on this, and I don't know why. I'm a little girl from Ohio. I mean, they did, even jazz would be, But I feel that I've spent I keep trying to get better at it. And I think I am. I'm getting better. My point was that I believe in free improvisation and composition being so married. I mean, of course. And this is proof of it, And we all have our approaches. But how you pulled that off, you guys were terrific. And I just want to, I've said this before, to have the confidence in me to just walk into this. You see that, but that means a lot to me. Like, you know, I have my collaboration with Jerry Gonelli, the drummer. If you don't know him, you should know that we've worked together a long time, and we have 2 CDs, and they were totally, I say totally free. In the end, it's not totally free. You relate to certain structures that you both, you know, you relate to that. But basically, that's the essence. But to see all with the choir and then the instrumentalists and then the text, it's very moving for me. I'm going to say it over and over because I was doing that in the 70s, late 60s. We didn't know what was going to come out of this, and this is what came out of it. You see, people continue to get that.
Yeah.
But that is how music started anyway. But then to make shape out of it and the whole choral, the environment thing that I was able to walk into, it wouldn't work with just any choir. You know, it could be in a way. How did I find that? You know, so anyway, it means a lot. And to continue this kind of thing is very, I think it is important in life. You know, it's about taking a chance. It's about the order of structure and free. I mean, where does that happen? And the more you do it, you get it. I mean, I don't even remember what I did, and that's good. The more this kind of work, you know. So then to hear it, it's good. I say, well, I don't remember, but I think, you know, it was nice to hear it. You wrote a nice lines for me. Thank you very much.
Well, we'll hear from the writer in a moment because she kind of talks about why she wrote it and what's in the back of her mind. But I just want to say, as a composer coming into this work, I mean, because it had all this, hi Cleo, hi. How are you? I haven't seen you in a long time. Hi, sweets. You're shy right now. It's good to see you. So I was, you know, I wanted to feature the different parts of this ensemble. That's quite a large ensemble. We had the choir, and then we had the band, and we had Jay, and we had me, and there's a lot of elements to play with. So the fact that we had this overlaying theme of the moon kind of allowed me as a composer to play around with how to approach the theme, because there was this one big blanket that I knew it would tie together under, so I could allow myself to, on one song, really write almost like a pop song, and then another song is like this epic narrative, and another is this, which is kind of more of it's a text score, really. It's not, there was no written music. I wanted to give DB a lot of freedom in this and in Patience. I really wanted DB to have a lot of autonomy within the composition, because I love the way you work, DB. I love the way you source material from the singers. And I'm so glad when you're describing the way that these systems have developed, I'm so glad that it's not this echoing thing, because I think the fact that there's this visual language allows for every singer in the choir to bring themselves. Vergil, you probably can weigh in on that, but you each bring yourselves. Like, really, I can tell each individual singer in the choir. It's not the point in this kind of choir is not the blend, I feel. It's actually like a community of individuals, which is so beautiful, and it's the way I want to live. I'm not striving for blend ever. I'm not striving for that.
Probably in a way, it's the proof that, you know, we can blend as individuals. It doesn't have to mean that everybody has to be streamlined doing the same thing to not achieve something that is, maybe not blend is the wrong word then, but harmony in some way.
Yeah.
Something that sounds together well when you put it together, even though all the individual parts are individual parts and not streamlined, you know, pieces of the same kind of thing.
Yeah, and you have the freedom to interpret, right? You see a cue and you interpret it however you want. So there's that element of improvisation and creativity on every person's part. And I really wanted to let that shine in this piece and in Patience that we'll hear in a few months. And to give DB the freedom to paint with her hands. so it's really a text score. I could kind of feel the feeling that I wanted to portray, the energy of it, and it was that kind of guidance that I gave as a composer. But there was so much loose, so every take sounded completely different. There was no room for edits or anything like that, because it was they weren't comparable. There was choose this one or that one.
Did we do it 2 times?
We did it. Well, we did the way we did
5
it.
times? I don't know. It didn't. I have no recollection. It just felt
The
like-
way we did it was a little. It's funny. It's like it's a weird producer thing that I've started doing over the last few recordings that I did. I don't know anyone else who does this, and usually people think I'm crazy, but I find that it really works for me. Which is, before we started going into doing takes, we did a run through of the whole set. If you recall, we played it as a run, as if it's a concert. We didn't stop between songs. We just recorded the whole thing down. And then we stopped, and then we did one more take of the song individually. But I think the one we used was from the run.
Wow.
Actually.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's why it didn't have the French, because after we did the run, we said, oh, let's try to bring the French in. But the run performance was actually so good because we were in performance mode. We weren't in studio mode of like over-analyzing every note and overthinking every beep and bloop. We just performed like we did the night before at Resonance on stage. So it had that live essence. Actually, a bunch of the songs, even songs that you maybe wouldn't expect, like Moon Story, we used from the run. A bunch of the songs are from the run. So I like that. I think it's a thing, even though people think I'm crazy. I stick to my to my plan. We do a run first.
Crazy is good.
Yeah.
Works
No.
for me.
Yeah. And you're completely right. You know, that essence of being in the live performance, even if you do the takes first and then say, oh, now, well, you've worked on it for too much already, you will naturally lose some of the spontaneous impetus that you have, of course.
Exactly.
You-
And when you know you're going to go through, then you kind of are in that mode of, okay, I'm going to keep going.
Yeah. And you bridge from one section. There's always something that carries over into the next. So the cohesion of the whole piece will be totally different than working on the individual elements. Not at all crazy. Ayelet, weigh in.
But however, you know, we did the run at Resonance the night before, and we recorded the run at the studio. And then Jay, I don't remember if we talked about this in January, but Jay, you mentioned about the last piece that ended up being the last piece. It was somewhere in the middle, and you said, no, this has to be the last song. So of course, eventually we had to reshuffle all the order. So nothing stayed like it was in the run.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I approach recording that way too, but recording is different. So even if you recorded it that way, when you think about the actual recording, it's not it's things can change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not contrived. It just makes sense because it's a different thing. Because now people are just putting it on, and that's it. But I'm so glad we did it that way. As far as just, I think that improvisation, it's like it is in the moment. And anyway, I lost my train of thought. I had a very profound thing to say. Because it's just sort of up for me this year. I've been doing a lot of interviews, and of course, you know, because that's one thing you can do on Zoom, and the whole idea of improvisation and that the special thing that can happen that you can't even write it. You can't write it.
No.
There's
Or do you want to really?
I know what I try. I never did want to. I just, because like there's some kind of things that you might hear come out of me that someone said, well, did you study modern classical music? Oh, no, I listened. I'm sure I listened. I always liked it, but no. So I'd rather improvise it than read all those. No, but some people can really read that stuff. It's fantastic. Anyway, whatever I'm saying, I thought no, but I thought about it because if you're interested, there's some new people that are interested in more free stuff. I meant to tell you about it. And it's called artists in jazz. I'll find the .com. They interviewed a lot of people for a long time. They've been great people.
Do you mean the alternative venues for jazz?
No, it's just a new group. They interview people for an hour, and then they took about 4 minutes of everybody's thing and put it on this site, which I'll text you, and it's called Artists of Jazz. And I'm very honored to have been asked to do it. And I was so curious because I was telling about my whole thing, how I started. You know, try to tell your story in 1 hour, and I wondered, what are they going to take from me? What 3 minutes? And it was a whole thing about free improv and how
cool.
Yeah, and how like years ago people would maybe like never was a huge audience, of course, in the 60s, the early 70s, but those people were diehards, and they knew that if they sat there for long enough, they were going to get this fantastic thing. It could be like 5 minutes, it could be 3 minutes. That they knew, and if you all relate to it, if you're into this free thing at all. And that's what was so wonderful to me. So I guess I liked it. I don't know. I just kept doing it. But I didn't decide to do it.
It found you. Yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea. I didn't even know I was going to be a jazz singer, but I knew I loved jazz, And I tried to tell people that I don't know. I didn't decide this, but I'm glad it happened. Because, and I'm scared.
We are too.
Yeah. I'm glad I continued doing it. A lot of players from those early days didn't continue, but the ones that did have both, just from the standards to the structures, comes out. I'm blabbing on. Thank you.
Oh, no.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is. And I love that fluidity. I think like we don't need to live inside any kind of boxes, right? Of defining ourselves in this genre or that one. It's nice to swim between them. I want to take a moment to listen to the writer Nomi Dele from Basel talk a little bit about her perspective with this song. And Jay, you already mentioned being a mother and a grandmother, so we can talk a bit more about that side of things after we hear from Noemi.
القمر برصة القمر فريدة القمر دايما القمر كريمة القمر نعيمة.
Mon nom est Noémie. Je suis née à Genève où on parle français, mais j'habite à Bâle, aussi en Suisse où on parle allemand. J'ai été gynécologue très longtemps. Et pourquoi j'ai été gynécologue? C'est que d'une part, comme médecin, c'est une profession où on fait plein de choses. Il y a des problèmes hormonaux, il y a des problèmes chirurgicaux, on fait des ultrasons, il y a la grossesse, il y a toutes sortes d'autres troubles, donc c'est très très varié. Et ce qui m'a surtout, je crois, décidé, ça c'était l'intérêt pour la matière, mais quand moi j'ai commencé à faire des stages, et même avant d'avoir fini mes études, la manière dont les gynécologues traitaient les femmes, c'était insupportable. Ce qui est arrivé, c'est que j'étais dans la rue le soir, même pas tellement tard, avec ma petite fille Ayala, et c'était la première fois que j'étais grand-mère. Elle a 7 ans et demi aujourd'hui, et elle a vu la lune, comme on parle le suisse-allemand ensemble, elle a mis son petit doigt en l'air et elle a dit « Mond » en allemand. Et à ce moment, alors que le fait d'être grand-mère était pour moi une émotion immense et un plaisir immense, cette idée que la lune, qui est un symbole de ce qui reste pour toujours, que tous les hommes probablement de cette planète ont vu depuis toujours et verront depuis toujours. J'ai eu ce sentiment de l'immensité, en fait, de l'univers et de notre lien. Et j'ai tout de suite pensé, mais comment ça sera quand Ayala sera une grand-mère? J'ai comme sauté une génération et j'ai fait le changement. Comment ça sera et où elle sera? Mais la lune, elle sera là. C'était ce sentiment d'immensité, de persistance de l'univers et de cette appartenance que j'ai et de la chaîne de toutes les femmes avant moi et après moi qui ont été grand-mères et qui le seront. Je m'imaginais surtout la grand-mère que j'ai le plus connue, parce que malheureusement les autres grands-parents, je les ai pratiquement pas connus. Et c'était important pour moi qu'on m'appelle aussi grand-maman. Parce que moi, j'avais eu une grand-maman, mes filles ont appelé ma mère grand-maman et je voulais être grand-maman. J'étais dans cette lignée de femmes et j'ai aussi beaucoup pensé à ma mère, comment elle était avec mes enfants, et je sais comment mes enfants la voyaient, comment ils l'aimaient et quelle place elle avait dans leur vie. Et c'était dans un sens très, très beau et quelque part un peu triste, parce que je me disais, ça aurait été tellement bien qu'elle nous voie. Peut-être elle nous voit quelque part, mais qu'elle sache que ça continue. Moi, j'ai ce sentiment que ça va continuer. Mais c'est vrai qu'on aimerait partager. Et avec qui je voulais partager ce sentiment? Avec celles qui ont été comme moi des grands-mères. Mais ça, c'est rare qu'on puisse le faire. Et je ne pouvais plus. Ma mère est morte avant que Ayala ne naisse. Mais oui, si, c'était les deux. Le sentiment et quelle place a la grand-mère dans la famille. Oui, j'ai beaucoup pensé à ça.
Wow.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much more profound now that I hear her talking about it. I think, you know, when I recorded the French lyrics, you know, I didn't have so much time to really understand the depth of the writing as much as I wish I could have. But I think I was lucky because as the last person coming in, Jay, you offered like so much richness with your voice, and I could hear the choir in there too. And like for me, it was just such a gift to be able to just come in and kind of like lay down the easy part, because I had all of this texture and depth surrounding it already. So I feel like in a way my job was so easy. And just to hear her speaking about the meaning behind the text and why she wrote it, and just kind of having a greater understanding beyond the words that she offered for the performance. Yeah, it's just a beautiful thing. I'm not really sure how else to describe it, but I just feel very tingly right now.
Oh, wow. Me too.
Yeah. So do I.
It's interesting because, you know, I came into the project and it's still, I'm still figuring out, you know, in other words, there's so many poetry, but the bottom line, if you heard that, the bottom line, it does have to do with, I didn't have time, I didn't study it, I didn't try to figure out anything, but it did, the fact that I am a mother and a grandmother, and I have a grandmother and I have a daughter, I know that played in there intuitively. Mm-hmm. And I know that it did, you know. but not because I tried to figure it out. I mean, it's like, I didn't even have time to figure even if I wanted to, really, I didn't have it, and so that's also proof about being in the present and how real life has to do with stuff,
That's true.
or not, in on my planet, it has to do with stuff in my teaching, your experience, and I always say, or not, you're just acting. It's not acting. There's a thin line there, but I'm scared to death of acting. But somehow, that mother, when just that little bit, those lyrics, and it's uncanny what comes in if you allow that. I'm speaking a lot because in retrospect, a lot of times I wonder, in the 70s, I was doing these free vocal improv workshops. And I'm like, what am I doing? No one's going to make any money at this. And why am I doing, but people were interested. And in the end, I know it had to do with connection, connecting to your inside. I didn't, it's like funny sounds. Some people just do sounds. Blah, blah, blah. No. It is extremely emotional.
Yeah.
And I kept doing it because I had a feeling. It wasn't because I figured that out later on. It's extremely emotional. If you can dig there, even like say being in the choir, everybody had their own experience of that, right? Mm-hmm. You evoked stuff, but they had. I know if we talked to each one of them, there was an emotional thing going on. Anyway, just to go on, but it is uncanny about mother, daughter, moon. Moon is I never knew anything about. I think it's fantastic, but I never until this project. It's not like I'm like a moon person. But now I am. It's right out here. Every time I see the moon, it's what I think of now. Yeah.
I was just thinking about the instrumentation too, just listening to Elam and the strings at the very end. And so that's speaking about emotion. It's the vibration literally allows us to light like birds. It's a piece that I did with you, Jay, in Banff. Something about, was it oh my God, it's a piece about birds sitting on a wire, not Bob Dylan, but it's I've just forgotten his name, the bassist, Conference of the Birds.
Dave Holland's
Conference of the Birds. I think we worked on that, but just that notion of just things lighting, sitting lightly on something, and you're feeling that vibration, and that all of that, even for Andrea coming in post to add to that, is picking up on those vibrations. That's the essence of music, and that's what carries everybody through in that experience.
For me, in this piece, what I loved about it from the first reading of it is how she takes a really banal, tiny little moment that happens, right, when you're with little children. It happens all the time that they notice something and they just point it out. And she, from that little stone throw, she ripples so far into like her own granddaughter's future and her own ancestry, and she ripples back and forth through the generations from just this tiny, tiny little moment of her granddaughter pointing at the moon. And those are some of my favorite moments as a parent. And I just wanted to kind of ask you if that resonates with you, and if your parenting and grandparenting kind of works its way into your work also, to your writing, to your composing, to your, to your singing.
It does, but it's intuitive. You see what I'm saying? And I can remember, for instance, it's uncanny, the whole lineage thing. My mother wanted to be a singer, but it didn't work out for her. She was in the 30s. She had to go to do it in a floor show. You had to, late at night, and her Italian father was like, no. So she always sang. I learned the standards from her singing them around the house. It was pop music to her. My daughter's a fantastic singer. So I didn't make any of this happen. It's just the lineage thing, you know. But I always, and again, I said earlier, I was like, how do you balance, you know, in and out, but also how do you balance life and art? And I know when I had my kids, you're now the modern day example of that. But I was in this. I had my kids in 71 and 72, and like people, I mean, there was no logic about it. We had no money, you know. But my thing was, I just felt the thing to have a child, and so I thought about the women that work in the fields. That, you know, they got them on their backs, and they don't say, "Oh, I wonder if we should have children now." You know, I mean, people do that, and I grant that you shouldn't have them if you have any reservation. I don't say everybody should, but it was like, I don't know, I guess so, and it wasn't easy.
Mm-hmm.
But why wouldn't? But by God, I mean, it is life, and it's just how could I be almost 80 and we're still trying to figure this out? You know, it's like, but I say life before art, and I do firmly believe that. Not, you know, it's like art is a reflection of it. You're trying to make sense. I'm just saying this because people ask. It's not like I ever could figure it out. But I think that makes sense to me, you know, and that the fact that I felt that strongly about it. I mean, a lot of times young people will say, should I have kids? How am I going to play jazz? Well, I don't know. You got to do. That's what you do. You know, it's just hard. You know, it's harder. But how wonderful to have a daughter who, you know, sings and my mother, I mean, I don't know, woo, doo, 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 you know, somehow
it passes through.
Connected. That's all I got to say. Somehow it's connected, you know, and that's not bad. I mean, it's a good thing.
Great.
You know, but I didn't have time to figure that out. I just got a text, and when I said, "What kind of grandma?" I meant that. You know what I mean? Will she be? You know. Anyway, like that. Just love talking about the whole process of music and life. It's
it's so intertwined.
Yeah.
Vergil, your daughter is a teenager, right?
Yeah, she's 14 now, will be 15 later this year. So
is she involved at all in your work? Have you ever involved her in anything?
I tried to, well, she has excellent taste in music, if I say so myself. I'm very proud of that. And by now she receives, or she takes no guidance from me whatsoever. Of course, she's a teen now. She creates her own world and she's very independent in that sense. And I'm really happy to say that everything she plays to me, Tame Impala and whatnot, it's interesting, moody music. It's pop music for the most part, but, you know, far, far more than just what's in the charts or what you would hear on the radio or on TikTok, awesome. I suppose. That's where kids get the music today, get their music from today. And I've offered her to play instruments. She tried the violin for a little bit. She's often in my studio, you know, set up a synthesizer and a microphone, and she would have a blast. But it's not been something that she has really taken to, and I'm not the sort of pushy parent, you know, who decides on behalf of my kids what they have to do, what she would have to do. Not at all. So, but I think that music is still, it's an important part of her life, and she treasures it a lot. You know, there's something about it. She started to play the guitar now. Because of the pandemic, they cannot play the usual instruments in the school band, so everybody learns the guitar. Oh, wow. And actually, she's quite apt, you know. We did a few lessons over Christmas, and she's taken to it very, very quickly.
Nice.
And, you know, so it's important for me, I think, that she has the horizon, that she realizes, you know, she knows from my music that there's more to it than a 4/4 beat and a melody. But, that's the only thing, you know, open the doors, open the windows, open their eyes to see the whole world in its beauty and all the different varieties, and then let her find her own path, just like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Today at Jay's class, both of my twins were both on top of me. One of them was like a little kitty and the other one was in the back, and they were just absorbing. Listening and singing and screeching. Super. You're developing a project around your around motherhood and your ideas about it.
Yeah, I've been dreaming up this project for many, many years. I think it all started when I became a mother, and I had so many challenges balancing being a mother and being a touring artist. And I felt a lot of loss, and I grieved a lot of loss for, I guess, the things that I thought maybe could have been that I wasn't able to do. Mostly because I just didn't know. It was such a new thing for me, and so just trying to reconcile that. And I started thinking about this notion of like, can we have it all as mothers, and is it different for fathers? And so things have expanded since then, because it's been 6 years that I've been thinking about this, and I've finally received some incredible funding, which I'm so grateful, so that I can finally move this project forward. So I've been starting to, I guess last year I started working on a piece with my daughter, which has been really, really fun and interesting, and very heartwarming. It's kind of, I feel like it's sort of bringing everything back to the beginning, back to the source, which is nice. And so, yeah, I'm hoping to chat with mothers and hear their stories. So that's the first part for me, is just really doing some listening. Instead of writing only from my own perspective, I really want to be able to listen and learn and understand what the greater experience of mothers is, or if there is a greater experience, or really our experiences are unique and individual, or if there are some common threads between. So that's what I'm looking forward to doing, hopefully in the summer, where I can sit face to face. I just feel like, having the avenues to be able to connect digitally are fantastic, and I'm so grateful for them. But I think for something as intimate as these conversations, I really would like to be able to do them face to face. So I'm hoping that can happen in the summer, and then just letting those stories emerge, and then letting the music follow, as opposed to kind of doing it from the other way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so important to also just have these conversations, because Jay, I remember when I was pregnant in New York, when I came out to do Lunar and the whole Mikali residency at the Stone, when I was pregnant with Maya, and I was about to give birth to a third child in, a year and a half difference from my first twins. And you were so encouraging, because you were part of that concert at the Stone, and you told me then that you had your children 14 months apart, right? And it was so encouraging, and I think that those stories and those the stories of the mothers in this lineage of jazz and improvised music, they're not really at the forefront of the conversation or the history. And we don't know them, and it feels very singular sometimes, like Andrea, like what you were saying about, is it our story, is there a collective experience, or is it all individual experiences? And I think part of the reason we don't know that is that it's not really spoken in our community so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to have those conversations. Mm-hmm. So I thank you for having this little conversation today.
Gotcha.
So we're coming to a close, but before we go, let's hear about the months to come from Birdie Lawson, who is an incredible energy worker and tarot reader and all-around human being, amazing human being who I love deeply. So she's going to do her month in preview, and it's going to be a good one. So let's hear it.
Hello, I'm Birdie from Four Directions NYC, and I am so happy to be working alongside Ayelet. I contributed some lyrics to this album, and I'm really happy to be sharing my knowledge and wisdom on astrology and Native American mythology every month as it applies and pertains to what's happening. so pleased to tell you that the astrology for March is so much simpler and sweeter than it's been in a while. And we really have an opportunity to move and evolve and get things going in a positive direction without delay after 2 months of Mars in Taurus. And Mars in Taurus is a very slow-moving, methodical, stubborn, even energy that really was okay because, you know, it helped us lay groundwork and helped us review and go on pause. And I think winter's a good time to have Mars be in Taurus, but now we get the chance to move ahead with those plans, to regain momentum, to quickly shed these layers that we've built up over the winter with that Mars moving into Gemini. The sun is now in Pisces, and the whole first half of March is really a sweet, loving, dreamy energy that I wish and hope that you take advantage of, because it's probably going to be the sweetest energy of the year. Definitely the sweetest new moon of the year. And then we have Mercury moving into Pisces on March 15th. Both the new moon and the Mercury in Pisces are going to be all about Piscean themes, which is allowing us to really go to these places that are super creative and super romantic. And when we go to those places, what we're able to do is embrace imperfections, use our imagination, start projects that require us to tap in really deeply to our artistic side, and be innovative. As well, this is a really medicinal, all those things are medicinal, and this is a really medicinal moon and a really medicinal time. There's a peacefulness around this new moon, which if you're able to take advantage of and you're able to tap into, should be very rejuvenating and empowering and strengthening. Again, especially after the astrology of the last 2 months, the astrology of the last year has been sort of brutal. And so now we have this new moon coming in that's like really going to feel like a relief. Pisces in general is all about release because it's ruled by the 12th house, and it's before the cycle in the zodiac begins again with the first house in Aries. And so this is our chance to really let go of anything we don't want to take forward. So, and that is also the theme of going from winter into spring. The energy of March is also going to be about reckoning with whatever we don't want to take forward. And so there's going to be a lot of cleaning house, whether it's emotional house, practical house, mental house. That first half of March is going to be with really strong Pisces energy. But then we have the sun moving into Aries on March 20th alongside the spring equinox. And so with the Aries, everything comes alive and comes awake, just like the spring energy. And we're really moving forward then on that. And so this first half is our last time to kind of dream and sleep, and then we're really woken up with the sun in Aries, as well as Venus moving into Aries on March 21st. The full moon this month is in Libra on March 28th, and in native astrology, this is known as the worm moon, which is really just about the worms returning to the surface after a long winter. And in certain tribes, it was also called the full crow moon, which is just about the cawing of the crows that were signaling the end of winter. So like every full moon, we're closing out a cycle. This being even more particularly so because this is the first spring moon And so we're really closing out that cycle of the winter and coming back into community with each other, with the earth, with the seasons, with the elements, with the sun, the moon, the star, the planets. Which is why, again, I advise you to take March, the whole rest of March, to prepare for that and just continue to shed, you know, from the inside out, make that space to come back into that community and have that experience again of joy and reunion. Being in Libra, which is the opposite of Aries, the focus emotionally and with this culmination is going to be about our partnerships. So again, there's this a transition happening that should feel like a relief. It shouldn't feel like it's a burden, but we're going from that isolation of the winter, being inside, being by ourselves, to coming back into the light, coming back into community with one another. And it's a reunion. So do your work the whole first part of March in preparing for that and making space for that. Like I said, whether it's literal or emotional or psychological, so that by the time that first spring moon comes, you can enjoy that feeling of coming back into communion with the earth and with the elements. This month should feel very different energetically than it has been. Much more simple. And with all the planets being direct, much less obstacles, much less of a delay. So take that space to swim around freely and get things done that you've been trying to get done during the winter, that maybe we're moving a bit slower. But mostly with that first half being about being in Pisces, which is about dreaming, and then moving into the Aries, which is all about really opening ourselves to the light. Be open and stay present, because this is a really medicinal time. And the more open and present you can be, the more space you have, the more you can tap in directly to those energies and really benefit, really bloom. Because with that Pisces energy, it's just all about letting go of the old, shedding the skins, because underneath is a new skin. And that's what this whole month is about, is letting go of that old and discovering what's beneath the surface, what that new life is that's blooming. So it's exciting. It should be exciting. And you know, a journey like all the rest of the months, but a bit of an easier journey. So just be open, and I'll see you next month.
A bit of an easier month. Are you ready?
Yes.
Wouldn't that be nice?
A bit of an easier year would be good.
Yeah, exactly. Taking it one day at a time. But before we say goodbye, I just want to remind people that we are working on a new animated video for next month. Which is the last song on this side of the album. We have a double LP in this project. This is the double LP. The first side is coming to a close next month. with the song Venus and the Moon. And we need your kids' drawings, please. Your kids or your friends' kids or your nephews or your whoever, whatever kids you have in your life, ask them to draw us a picture of Venus conversing with the moon and send it to me by March 15th so that it can be included in this new animated video. And we made a little video of the little people who already started doing that. So let's watch that quickly. It's like 30 seconds long. It's not long. But
tonight I hear a whispering. It's Venus to the moon. A bluey glow was shared by them. I watched them from my room. Venus is the daughter and the father is the moon. He talks to her so gently. I watch them from my room. Bum, beedum, beedum, ba-diggity, bum, beedum, ba-dum, ba-doodity.
so that's it. Send us your drawings. Register for the intensive if you feel like it. It would be so great to see you. And I want to thank deeply, 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 first of all, Laura Silverman, who is doing all the backstage work on this, on these conversations. Yay, Laura! Thank God for you. And Sarit and Dan, who made the artwork for this project, and Porrig and Chris Gestrin, who created the sounds that on the technical angle of sound. And I just want to mention in this particular event, because it was the first time we really focused on the choir, I want to mention all the choir members: Kathy Kennedy, Vergil Sharkya, Graham Weber, Damaris Baker, Cleo Palacio-Quintin, Setchkin Sinar, David Cronkite, Maya Cherokee, Christiane Charbonneau, and Stephanie Rochester. Thank you all, and thank you, Jay, and thank you, DB, and thank you, Andrea, and thank you, Vergil, for today.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
So
Thank you for having me.
with you. Really beautiful being with you. Next conversation, April 12th. It's a Monday, right after the intensive. The day after. All right, my darlings. Thank you. Thank you. See you soon.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
See you.